everyone, and welcome to this episode of Ignite Leadership. We are here at Goa Fest and recording the Goa cast along with Anupriya and Rohit. So, welcome, guys.
Thank you.
So much
Thank
for
you.
coming.
Thank you for having
So,
us.
we're just going to have a chat over breakfast and keep this more of an open conversation and not really like a very corporate discussion, right? So, I think just to get started, as people who work in this marketing, advertising, and PR spaces, you have to both be a consumer of the culture to have a pulse of the culture, and you folks are also the leadership that drives this culture. So first, I want to ask you a bit of, your consumer habits and then get behind, how you work to actually drive these changes. So I think the first question I have, and I'll explain why I have it, is do you folks personally use social media? Like, are you scrolling on your phones in between meetings at all?
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
We are an average human being as well. So I surely do scroll a lot.
What's your go-to platform?
So I am mostly on LinkedIn. But I also, LinkedIn these days or any social platform that you're on. These days, I've realized it's like ubiquity. You can move from one to the other pretty seamlessly. So you go onto Insta pretty quickly before you realize you're already sort of consuming things which are being pushed to you. And from there, suddenly you'll go to a link for shopping. So it's a pretty seamless experience. You don't have to try too hard. Yes, I'm pretty familiar with a lot of these.
What about you, Rohit?
Yeah, absolutely. Scrolling too much, in fact. So we are in that zone of detoxing from scrolling, quite honestly.
Yes.
But yeah, LinkedIn and Instagram. So those, really look at that a lot. I think it's really interesting because there are so many new things to actually see and consume all the time, and perhaps it's a good and a bad thing. But yeah, so as consumers, we are consuming social media as well,
Yeah.
and creating it as well.
Yeah, and that being said, I must also say that one of the things that comes to my mind, when you're particularly asking us about what we consume, the thing is also, I find at least it a bit challenging to get onto all the newer and newer sort of chat sort of platforms coming up. Earlier Snapchat and then, the gaming chats and all of that, because what happens is you can get over there, and Clubhouse and many other such platforms keep coming, and there's a hottest, latest sizzling one at any point in time. And when you get over there, you see that okay, few of your friends are there, and a lot of them never really take off, or some of them I have realized that the youngsters, the Gen Zs, like to keep it to themselves. And they try and not sort of overly communicate or popularize to the older people. So like my niece and my son, they are all like on another platform and they keep it separate and all of that. So that also definitely I see it as an emerging trend, and that's fine, I guess.
Yeah. So the reason I was asking this, right? Like if I speak to anyone kind of in the same professional circles as me and I ask them, what is branding and marketing to you? I think Instagram or any one of these platforms is going to be the only answer that comes to their mind. So I want to understand, behind the curtain as leaders behind these kind of spaces, how much does social media have a piece of the pie in an overall strategy?
Okay, should I go first?
Yeah, please.
Well, I think social is pretty central to all strategies now. And it has been some time that we've been talking about mobile and penetration and data, easy availability for everything. But now I think to my mind, everything is social. The lives that consumers, including in India, are spending online is as much as the line they're spending offline. So, and all those boundaries that we talk of have already sort of, they don't exist. So an average consumer is going from offline to online pretty seamlessly. And we just discussed like how once we are online also, it's a pretty seamless journey from one platform to. So nobody's trying to make an effort, okay, I'm going to be only on Insta, or I'm going to be only on Meta or Facebook or Google or, Amazon or, it's pretty seamless. And social is central to all of that because I think it encapsulates everybody. If you look at the numbers as well, it's one of the highest penetrated sort of platforms are the social platform. And it is not only great for advertising, marketing, and so content kind of stuff, like created content, but also curated as well as user-generated content. And like Rohit rightly said, when you're there, you just sort of forget you are just there.
Yeah.
And the whole rise of influencers and rise of use of social for marketing and branding is a function of that. That being said, are we there and have perfect solutions on that? I think we have a long way to go.
So, from my perspective, just to add to, and I agree with what Anu's been talking about, I think to me, the flip side, if you look at it, what is really happening is there is a brand fog, right? There is so much of information. You don't know what you're looking at really, but you're just looking at something, right? I don't think half of it you absorb fully well because, at the end of because there's so much happening on social media, and today every brand social is the most important thing, and they're focusing on that. So there's so many brands, so much of information, so much of stuff. There's a sameness in it, and today I think the most important, the crying need is really to look at social from the aspect of creating differentiation and cutting through that fog. You have to be like a lighthouse with that beam that goes through the fog and shows that ship, which is the consumer, to come to you. Because it's impossible now to do it, because you have to really get a very differentiated offering or something. And that's why we say this is the age of creativity, and to find the most creative ways to connect in that social media. So just because social media is now omnipresent and it's like a rabbit hole, you go inside and there's so much wonderful things to see, but how much of it is stuff that you're absorbing, how much of it is actually leading to a definitive decision or buy or not buy, or a definite impact on behavior or on attitude, etc., whatever the objective you've entered social media for. But it's really, really important actually to figure how to connect, right? Because the medium is there. Everybody is using it, right? Now it's like, it's like a huge open swimming pool and everyone's jumped in, right? But, you can't make out who's swimming where, right? It's just like a mass of bodies, you don't know what is happening.
I think fog is a great word to use for it. As soon as you said that, it connected with my mind of being on a platform and being an hour into it and being like, wait, what am I doing?
Mindlessly.
Yeah.
So I think also connecting to that, right? You said earlier that there's always a new thing that's popping up that everyone finds out about around the same time or different times. So I want to ask, right, like as people who understand the industry from the inside, what do you think, let's say 5 years from now, looking back, what do you think will be indicators of brands and, like IPs that have really stood the test of time versus ones that were just a flash in the pan, viral, just in the moment and then disappeared? Is there some kind of foresight or hindsight that you think you'll be able to tell through?
What I feel is, 5 years in today's day and age is a lifetime, right? Nobody can predict 5 years. And, if you think you can predict 5 years, you're foolish. Because, any leader who can say that I'm looking at 5 years hence doesn't work, because the pace of change is so rapid. If you can figure what will happen in the next 24 months, I think that's a good enough place to actually be in. And specifically, to your question as to what you think are the differentiators is really going to be around how brands actually find relevance, right? In this whole context of how do you connect and be relevant? So the insight that you have about your consumers, understanding that, not just being present, but making a connection, right? That I think is really important, Saeed.
I fully agree with what Rohit said, and I think what what really underlines this whole thing is relevance. So how are you going to stay relevant? To my mind, it is what brands want, where they want to reach and sort of etch in time with consumers is like a North Star. This is where they want to be and they want to reach, and whether it is a time frame of 24 months to 3 years to 5 years to decades. There are brands which sort of survive decades and thrive for years and decades and so on and so forth. So that's like the North Star. And how you get there is a strategy. And it's like, for example, let's say you're on a ship and you're driving towards the North Star because that's where you need to reach. If there are storms in between, you may choose to sort of navigate to a different direction and all that. And finally, however, you may change here, you may change there, whatever. So all of this, when we talk about the impact of social, the impact of earlier the search, and now, so these are all things which keep coming up, trends which keep coming up, newer behaviors, consumer behaviors, now Gen AI, and that's shaping consumer behavior. All of these things keep coming up. The relevance of brands and the role of marketers and advertisers is to ensure that they ride that wave and are able to still continue. Don't let the North Star go out of your vision. And somehow. So now today, does it take to be an expert at social or at Insta or changed way of commerce or omnipresence? Because there's a rise also of experiential, as we talk about. You look at all the number of footfalls which are there in retail stores, the experiences that consumers are getting there. You look at any of these music festivals and the turnout that is there, and so what methods are you going to use can change, and you need to be sharp on that. Yeah. But I think that you're not stopping.
I think Anu's made a very important point. I think the brands that succeed, whether it's over a period of time in today's world, I think the most important thing is to balance short, medium, and long. What are those short, medium, and long-term objectives that the brand has? You have to have an eye on all three and say that, okay, this is so. Your short-term objectives may rapidly change, your medium terms may change, be course-corrected, but your long-term stays, right? So the thing is that and that's the point Anu is making really, is that understanding that thing of how to balance it all, because it's not good enough to say, I will just aim for that and I'll chart a course whichever way it is, because there's so much of change happening. You need to be flexible, you need to be humble, you need to learn, you constantly need to be a learning organization and be open to saying that we have a vision, but our plan is flexible.
Yeah. I think otherwise you're just pulled by whatever viral trend is at the moment.
And you can't, and you can't, like, let's say, we're navigating a storm or a change in direction because of the environment. You cannot get so involved with that you lose sight of the mission.
Absolutely.
So if social is a trend or XYZ is a trend today, you cannot get totally engrossed. And to Rohit's point, cut through creativity has a role to play through any of these. So it may just take various shapes and forms, but for it to stick with the consumer, obviously you will need it always.
So, speaking of change, I want to take a bit more of a personal note with the two of you. So what did a day in the life of your work look like when you were early in your career? And do you see a difference between that and early career professionals in present day?
A lot.
Yeah. Please tell us more, because when we talk about change, we talk about like industries, trends, and it gets very abstract. But I think it's nice to get a kind of hands-on feel for what your early career was like.
Well, on a lighter note, I can tell you that I there were fax machines when I started, and I used to use that for communication. I'm glad today we have WhatsApp. It makes life much easier. But yeah, I mean, when I started my career in the mid-90s, it was a television era. I joined in media because I had math background. I was just put in over there. It was a time when youngsters used to really listen to what their bosses were saying. So when I joined the industry, I was told that since I had a math and science background, I should be befitted for media as a career. And I said, all right. I didn't question that, and it's very different from today. But in any case, the large part of my role when I started out, I was like a sponge, okay? And everything, you learn and learn everything around you from scratch, because what you learn in a workplace is not something that is taught you in colleges. And you learn the basics and learn the ropes of the profession and the trade pretty much on your job. And so being a sponge really helped. And a large part of my day used to go in very sort of executional stuff. If I was to look back, I would say it was very operational, executional. And I used to, like, if I was to go on leave, I would say, oh my God, what is going to happen to this campaign? How this agency run? Like, I thought, the whole world will come to a standstill. And have I done this? And have I done that? And, whatever. So I think, and then of course you reach middle management and bit by bit. So how today, the difference that I see is that what keeps me awake now is not whether a campaign is on air or this one is there, or, is more like, are we assessing change fast enough? And most of my time is, the large part of my time at least is spent on decoding what the future might hold. And what is there, like, just being paranoid about the future, and are there things and signals that we are missing? Because we know, and that's true for my leadership team, and we do a lot of discussion around this. It's a discipline that we follow to ensure that, because one of the role as leaders is to ensure you're looking at the North Star, and you don't definitely get sort of get caught by the storm, because you have teams which are definitely doing like well on that. But if you miss that, then I think it's also the responsibility of leaders, and you failed your team if you are sort of having your. So a large part is that, and then of course there's always operational work, and there's always the here and the now and the need to give good results every quarter. So that's how I would say it is different.
What about you, Rohit?
So for me, I mean, pretty much the same. I'm older than Anu, but when I started, apart from fax machines, we used to have letters typed, right, from a typewriter.
Okay.
Right? So I don't know whether you've ever seen a typewriter before, but it used to actually get typed in 3 copies of that letter on a, this machine which used to have these 3 copies. One used to go to the client, etc. But that was the time, and I would define that time as the age of slavery, because that's how we were treated in the agency, right? So you were slaves, and you did whatever the boss said, and it was, you're obviously absorbing a lot of it in the work, as you do, you grow up in the agency, etc. But it was very clearly a command and control kind of an environment, right? So the bosses commanded and controlled, and you did without asking why, what was to be done, right? So nobody had time to listen to, your idea and stuff like that. And I think that world has changed completely right now. It's no longer, if you do command and control, you're not going to have one person in your team working. Even the youngest person who comes in has a point of view and wants to be heard. And you have to make sure, as a leader, I think for me, the big thing that I was very concerned about was really about, culturally, was the organization a great place for creativity, right? So are we creating the right environment in which we can attract the best people, attract the best talent, and get them to perform at their best? Right? Because if individuals perform at their best, the organization will take care of itself, because each individual is reaching their potential and maxing it. And then the organization will automatically, by virtue of having all these people within that, really reach its maximum potential. So the whole thing is focusing on really making sure that every individual reaches that max potential. And then, so instead of command and control, really, you create an environment which is enabling and empowering people to be their best, right? So that shift, I think, is the biggest change that I see, when I look back at where we were and where we are now. In many ways, it's that slavery era, is completely changed, right? So I would say that in some form, the leaders are slaves, in a way now, because we are so conscious about how we have to empower, encourage, and enable our teams, our young people. So you're almost hostage to that, saying that, are we doing the right thing? Are we making sure that, people are really, feeling that sense of engagement with the organization, are feeling that sense of, I'm being able to give my best, and we're harvesting ideas across the whole team, versus, because today that era of one person will think is finished, right? There is no one person will think. It is a group will think, because we are looking at multiple talents, we're looking at multiple opportunities to connect with consumers. So there you have to take many perspectives in and knit them together, right? So as a leader, perhaps the only thing that you do is you have the vision to say, okay, I can knit this way. So you have to get all the people together, the right talent, bring them together. You don't have to necessarily do the work yourself. But like Anu was saying, if there's a North Star, whether the North Star is about what the work you want to do eventually, how to build that brand or that organization, you keep that North Star, but you knit it in a way. And that understanding how you can actually, this fabric, these different materials that come in together, ki fabric niklega kaisa, that I think is the leadership role now.
So, Rohit, something you mentioned, right? Back in your early career, you weren't allowed to ask why. You just had to follow instructions. Yeah. Do you feel the present generation asks why too much, or they ask why in the right amount?
So, I don't think it's too much, quite honestly. It also, is a function of what the organization is structured like, right? So oftentimes, if you say that there is a limit to the number of whys you're asking, then you're being limiting in any case, right? So people will think twice about, is my quota of whys over, right? So the idea is that it's a free and open environment, and you can question, ask anytime, any number of times. So I don't think that, the younger generation is asking why is, I think, really positive change that I'm seeing, because they're asking why and quite honestly responding to it as well, right? So it's not that you just ask why and then move on, right? So they're asking why and looking to improve and become better, as people in an organization, as well as overall as individuals as well. So I think it's a great thing.
Yeah. So, when typically, like if anyone Googles the two of you, or we see the kind of great pieces written about you, both of you are talked about being agents of changes in these huge agencies and industries, right? So I just wanted to ask you one by one, like for you as well, you're known as someone who has a transformative role in a big agency. So what's an indicator to you that, it's a time where something needs to majorly change, and as a leader, how do you drive that?
So I've actually been in 3 agencies. I was in J. Walter Thompson for 22 years, and then I've done 6 years in Dentsu and 8 years in FCB. So I haven't really been in many agencies. And quite honestly, after JWT, when I joined Dentsu and then later FCB, the agenda was really to recast both the agencies, right? But I didn't enter the agency with a charter of change, right? Saying that I'm going to change all these things now. And I think that's fundamentally the worst thing that a leader can do, is come in with a preconceived notion of change, right? Because that's the easiest thing, because then your own ego and your personality and your thinking is dictating the change versus what the organization needs. You have to understand first each of the organization. The organization has a fabric, the organization has a culture, and the organization has, a legacy in you have to understand all of that and then co-create the path to change with obviously your vision with the people that you really want to retain and keep in that organization. So I've never ever come into an organization saying I will change all these things. This is all containers of the past, right? And we must get rid of legacy. Absolutely not. I think I've worked on legacy brands for a very long time, and I know that brands have deep roots, right? You should never ever cut the deepest root, because if you cut that deepest root, the brand will die. It's like a tree and a plant, right? So understanding what is the root system of the organization, and then saying, okay, within this root system, we will make these changes, right? The tree can be shaped and cut and pruned in a different way, but that root system needs to be preserved, because organizations have been built over 50 years, 60 years, right? So it's not that you can just uproot the thing and plant it somewhere else and say, okay, done, I've done my job. Because you have to see how you can channel what the organization's legacy is, what the organization's culture is, in a new direction. Balance the old and the new, right? And I am a very firm believer in this whole thing of, you cannot throw away what an organization's culture is. You can evolve it, but you cannot just junk it, because. And I truly believe that, and we've seen that in many brands, where people have this anxiety of, we must connect with the next generation. Oh God, we're missing out. We are still in the, a lot of stuff we are doing is still very yesterday. So a classic example is, and Anu, is here, so I thought we just throw this into the mix. Is a campaign that I worked on almost 20 years ago, called Ye Dil Mange More, right, for Pepsi. And it was the most iconic campaign of all times. But after 5 or 6 years, we were, and I was part of the team as well, where we said, okay, maybe this is old hat, maybe it's not connecting with young people. But Pepsi's brought it back again. Yeah. Right? After so many years, they brought back the same line. Right? So the thing of some places, where the brand's legacy and what it stands for, and in this period, right, Pepsi's gone to many venues of becoming more socially aware, saying that we don't want to be frivolous, we want to be more meaningful, more purposeful. Everything has actually not worked for Pepsi, right? Because finally the consumer is saying, you're my fun partner. Right? Stay in the fun zone. Why are you giving me lectures of life and how to be a better human being and how to change my career, etc.? You don't have that license, right? So I come to you in my fun times, right? So enjoy with me, party with me, right? And be that partner. So the whole thing of understanding what the brand is at the soul, what an organization is at the soul, and then saying, okay, now this I will take and change and re-articulate, which is being done now. You re-articulate the soul in a different way to connect with today's consumers, but don't kill everything that you can see.
I like the analogy of the plant that you use with the deepest root, and immediately to my mind the Jaguar rebrand came, which everyone was talking about last year. I mean, I think, it more needs to be an evolution rather than a change. Otherwise, even the consumer themselves are left kind of, confused and like in that fog as well, trying to understand, how do I respond to this? Yeah. What are the people behind this thinking about? But Anupriya, can you tell us, like, as a leader, what is the kind of line or, blurring between legacy and change? Because to say change is a very buzzword or kind of thing that always happens, but how do you see it from behind?
So, for me, I'll talk more from an organization perspective, and I'm like Rohit. I've also worked with multiple organizations, and in my leadership roles, I've had the opportunity to, in my early career, was leading TME, the Media Edge. It was going through a particularly tough time at that point in time when I joined. And similarly, I led Aegis in Singapore. And when I joined at that point in time, that agency was also going through a tough time. And what I learned pretty fast on both these roles was that you have to build the future on your strengths. It can never be, so it's not one size fits all. You have to ensure that, like what Rohit said, that it's not, you never ever do change for change's sake. Okay, so firstly, you need to be very, very privy and understand in depth what you have and what are your strengths as against in the world of tomorrow and also in the changing competitive landscape. That is super important. If you don't get that right, then everything else is inconsequential. Because those are the things that you're going to carry with you, which are going to help you succeed in the future, right? So one is that. The other thing which I'm a big fan and also got trained over many roles on this one is to actively look out for change and actively look out for signals of how the environment is changing. Because if, so it's a fine balance. You work on your strengths, you carry that forward, but don't be too caught and don't get too inward looking. Because if you miss the signals outside how the world is changing, we've seen many companies and at the sort of dissipating into nothing, like, famous examples and Canon and, Walkman and so on and so forth. And you look at the case, look at Microsoft is a great example. If you look at when Satya Nadella took over, at that point in time, it was stuck in like legacy things, Windows, and, it was stuck in its legacy products, which weren't really making a difference. They were a hugely successful company, but they were trying everything and it wasn't sort of, and Satya Nadella brought in this whole culture of an open mind, looking outside. Where is the world headed? Are we in the right sort of swim lane? And they carried this strength along with them. It's not like suddenly they started being something else altogether.
Yeah.
But he, for example, created a whole vision and step into the world of cloud computing and the things which were coming up in the realm of technology, in the swim lane that, gave them the strength. They had an access to all the enterprise systems and all. So they carried this strength, they built on this strength, but looked at the newer sort of things that are. And of course, we've seen, and then to the culture point, like Rohit said, of course, culture runs deep into organizations. And this whole culture change also needs to be brought about, which is a culture of open mind. And when we say that, the culture of the growth mindset that we talk of, I think it's something that needs to run through the whole organization. And if you have to continue succeeding, then that's very critical as well. And I'm a big fan of, that's what I spoke about earlier as well. To actively look out for signals, I think it's very important. It's not something that only when you're shaken, then you know that. Proactively, at least some part of you, your leadership team, your people. And in fact, I wanted to build on what a very interesting thing that Rohit said, which was like, why is, and do we people ask the younger people why and all that jazz, and, are they asking too many whys? No, because a lot of change, might get missed only by you. So a lot of change actually is read by the whole company and people across the company. A lot of organizations, including ours, for example, we do very active listening. So develop a culture of listening. So we have, like, for example, in a year, I think 3, 4 or twice, an active sort of survey as well, in where we hear our people in terms of, what are they thinking, what are their aspirations, what would they like changed, and so on and so forth, both in a quality form and a quantity form. So, and it helps us also. It's not only like they have an open culture and they can come and say whatever. We also draw them out of their shell if they are in a shell, to listen actively as to what their thoughts are. At a middle level, we have created something known as a next generation board. So these are people in early leadership, just like sort of getting into that area, and they help us decode a lot of these things actively. So we task out things to them, and it's a great sort of great points of views which get shaped through them. So there are many ways of making it structurally possible within large organizations, so that you continue to embrace.
Yeah. I think it's great to pick your brain as well. Like, I don't think a lot of people who work in these kind of cultures get access to leadership. So it's nice to have you all here, and, I'm sure you can share it with a bunch of people in your company as well. But yeah, so just for the last part of this episode, we wanted to do a quick rapid fire to get your hot takes on a few things, right? So first one is, what is a marketing truth that nobody admits to?
Okay.
I'm seeing a lot of tension.
Actually,
around the room.
No, not tension. I'm just saying
There's so
that
many.
to limit
Trying
to
to figure out which one. So, marketing truth that
that nobody really admits out loud.
I think one of the biggest truths is really about relevance, right? And I think the people know the word, but do they really understand the word and what it means to be relevant, and really change from within to be relevant, right? So I'm saying that the relevance aspect of it is perhaps one of the biggest things that marketing people talk about, but I don't know whether they truly understand what is it that makes it relevant. Because oftentimes you're looking at relevance from so many different mirrors, right? So, or lenses that actually it what is truly relevant and truly meaningful and human, you kind of lose sight of. So I think that's a big thing in the marketing world.
I would say listening, and one of the things that I've heard from a lot of marketers and clients, and I think this whole thing of staying close to the consumer. We believe today that a lot of it can be done just by social listening and getting signals, reading signals for various things. But nothing really replaces ever market visits and actually seeing consumers on the ground and like dealing with your brands and company brands and all of that. And I think that's something that has, faded a bit with time, and definitely is very important.
Yeah. Okay. So in a similar vein, right, what is a marketing buzzword that you hate hearing around you?
Marketing buzzword that we hate. I would say digital.
Okay.
Like, it's no longer a separate word, and it's no longer a separate thing that it's just a way of life. But still we find a lot of people talking about digital marketing. Like, what is non-digital marketing?
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Yeah, and to me, I think the big buzzword, I mean, if you look at what everybody is talking about, is AI. And, people are banding AI down everybody's throat, saying that, okay, AI will come and AI will change and AI, let's do, and it's become such a easy thing. Oh, maybe AI can do this, but, I mean, AI can't do this unless you tell it what to do, right?
Yeah.
So the whole thing of, this is a new thing, that's a toy that everybody's playing with, not fully understanding what the toy can actually do and what it can not do. I think that understanding is still nascent. I mean, it is part of the evolution, really, as we also understand this better. But I think, the biggest fear is that AI will become like a little buzzword, and things you won't be able to actually, and people are missing the fact that it has the potential to transform the way we actually think about business brands and our way of working. So it shouldn't fall into the let's play.
Just as a band-aid, quick fix. Just throw it there. Okay. So what is one thing that small agencies do that big agencies could really learn and look up to?
So, the small agencies, one of the things is obviously the intimacy that they have with their clients. Because obviously they're founder-led. I'm assuming that's what you're meaning by small agencies. So they're founder-led, and then the founders have deep connections with the clients. And I think as we see large roles and network agencies, like I remember, when I was chairman of the group, one of the clients actually told me something which I found was very interesting, and I thought was so true. She said, as you become better at your job, your organization pushes you into roles which are where you don't really are doing that job anymore, right? So it's like, you really understood the brand and the communication, but then, at that level, you're not actually doing that job, because you're facilitating other things, right?
Yeah.
So that I found was very interesting. That was a truth in a way, right? So as you hone your skill, you become further and further away from using that skill to deliver finally, because obviously there are other people doing it now, right? So that was an interesting.
What about you?
I would say there's a place for everyone, and I think whether it is a small agency or a large agency, they are pretty much thought through which is the area that they are playing in, and what they do or decide not to do is pretty much also a strategy, and I think that's fun.
Sure. Yeah. So this is similar to the first question, but if you have anything on your mind, what is an unspoken rule of marketing?
Actually, I'm just trying to understand the question. You're saying somebody who enters marketing?
Yeah, someone who's right early in their career, what's something that they just have to pick up from the environment of their workplace in marketing rather than something that's just directly told or given to them?
So I'll give you one example, which I think was finally one of the big things that I found changed in marketing organizations was really about evaluation of creative by a committee, right? Where the boss basically asks the junior most person to comment on a campaign, and this maybe the junior most person has just joined 2 months ago, to have a point of view on something that has been well researched and created with a lot of experience, with agencies. And I find that aspect of empowerment is actually misplaced, right? Because creativity is very fragile, right? And I think when you're coming into the business, people don't spend enough time immersing themselves into the brand and understanding it. You could, and somewhere when you're very young and you come into the thing, your thing of taking the radical point of view or saying, oh, I don't agree with this, or I think it can be much better. It's the easier route to take, actually. If you say, I like it, but these are the things that you could do to make it better, that's the harder route to take. So people usually take the easier route to say no, because saying no is easier than saying yes, right?
Yeah.
So I think somewhere in this whole construct, that understanding and learning how to actually build ideas and build and grow creativity is a fine art, right? And it needs to be learned over a period of time.
Yeah.
I would say, if I was to look at the lens, like you said, that somebody who's joining the workforce in marketing, and I think a lot of time is spent in terms of ABC of marketing, attention, branding, communication, or pricing, product, and proposition, and all of that. Sometimes what is possibly not said, and it should be said enough, that eventually the role of marketing is to support growth of the brand and the company. And sometimes those things are not made that clear. And as growing up, I remember when I was very young in my profession, it dawned on me suddenly that, it's a very simple truth. That is what it exists for. But you just get into so much of jargon and, how it is done and decoding marketing, that the simple truths sometimes people miss to say. So I would say that we can say more of that.
So my final question for you folks is, if you could go back in time and give one piece of advice to your younger self in the first year of your career, what would that be?
Okay, I would say not only my first year, but also in my few, maybe many more years since then also. I think maybe put your opinion forth, even when you're not asked. A lot of times, if you're quiet, you're just passed over. And that's something that I learned with time.
So for me, I think it was perhaps more, if you talk about just the first year, right, was actually listen to your heart. And I think I studied to be a chartered accountant and did my cost accountancy. Okay. So I was actually looking to do a finance job in some factory, remote factory in some other place. When I suddenly felt that, this is not what I want to do, right? I was always very creative, right? So, and I said, I don't think that is, because when I was growing up, that was the only thing you could do, either be an engineer, chartered accountant, or a doctor. There were 3 options, and your parents basically said, do one of those, right? So, and I was actually slipping down that slope, and I took more than a year to actually then decide, no, this is not what I want to do. And I wish I had not wasted even that 1 year, that, and truly understand. And I think today, that's what I admire about the young people today, is that they truly are not scared of making some bold decisions, right? Saying that, okay, I won't do what everybody else is doing. Today, of course, there's so many options for young people in terms of careers, in terms of what they want to achieve. So those are great things. But I think the fantastic thing is, I know so many of the young kids today they are all wanting to create jobs and not do jobs, right? So they are starting up on their own, and they're not scared to do it, right? In our time, my God, we the middle class, and my dad was in service, and everybody had to do a job, right? So nobody thought of starting something. And maybe the one thing I would do is at that time give myself courage enough to say, why don't you start something of your own, right? So that would be my take.
Yeah. I love both the answers you gave, because no matter what the trends or the landscape of it changes, at the end of the day, it really is about like the culture and the people and the confidence you instill in them. So just through this talk itself, you guys have showed your leadership qualities, even though this was more of a casual conversation. But yeah, thank you folks for joining us so much for today in our breakfast session, and hopefully you have a great time at the rest of Goacast.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
For having us. We enjoyed ourselves as well.
Yeah.
The coffee was good.